What up, nerds? My name is Leslie Smith. Welcome to the Nerdy Narrative. Now, if you've been around the channel for a while, you know I love to talk about my adventures in reading. I read many genres, authors from all over the world, but today I'm going to do a book tag. Now, if you've seen the thumbnail, you've already figured out I'm going to do the Stephen King book tag. This tag was created by the channel Jess Book Girl TV. I will have her channel linked in the description box below, along with a link directly to her version of the tag. You will also find the channel Criminally linked there as well, because that is whose version of the video that I saw the tag of and decided I wanted to do it. So without further ado, let's hop right into prompt number one. All of the prompts will be in the description box below, so if you are a fellow creator and you would like to do this tag, I have all of those listed there for you to find easily. And if you are not a creator but you want to answer the questions of these tags in the comments below, please feel free to do so. I would love to see your answers. Let's get started with prompt number one. How did you get into reading Stephen King? I am 46 years old, about to be 47 in a few months, and I started reading Stephen King in junior high. I have no idea what prompted me to pick up my very first Stephen King book. I know that I was a big fan of horror. Back in those days, I wrote a lot of horror short stories myself. That was just my form of therapy and coping with the things that were going on in my life at that age. So it may have just been I simply walked into my library and said, what's a good horror story? But unfortunately, that's 30 plus years ago, and I don't remember how I got into him. Prompt number two, what was the first Stephen King book that you read? I do remember my first book by him was It. I'm actually quite shocked that I continued reading Stephen King after that, because those of you who have read that novel and know me, you know what my biggest fear is. And for someone who loves horror, that fear seems to be present in a lot of horror novels. Come on guys, there has to be something else scary that you can use besides this one thing. You know, maybe I was able to rationalize it away, since it's also alluded to maybe not being, okay, I'm gonna get into spoilers for those of you who haven't read it, so I'm just gonna say it and we're gonna just go right on into prompt number three. Have you read a Stephen King book published in the year you were born? There are two that Stephen King published in 1977, The Shining by Stephen King, and then one of his Bachman books, Rage. The very first one, I believe, written under the name Bachman was Rage, and I have read both of those. Rage was actually one I read recently in the last year or two. Rage is actually my favorite Bachman book. The Shining, I remember a lot of, but it's one that I really want to reread sooner rather than later, and I'm actually planning to, I'm gonna save that. I'm not gonna tell y'all that because that is for 2024 and we're just gonna leave that a mystery until then. Prompt number four. Which of his books do you prefer to collect? Hardcover editions, paperbacks, or it doesn't matter to you? Ordinarily, the answer would be paperback. I love paperbacks, especially when they're floppy. They're just lightweight. They're way more comfortable to hold when reading, in my opinion. But with Stephen King, he is a favorite author. I do love his books, and I will collect anything I can get my hands on. That includes hardbacks, it includes paperbacks, it includes other versions of any kind of book I can get, whether it be paperback. I even have some of the original Dark Tower in hardback. I don't care what it is. If I see it, especially if it's Dark Tower, I'm gonna buy it. And then that prompt ties directly into prompt number five, which is how many books of his do you have on your shelf? Currently, at time of filming, I have 43 of Stephen King's novels on my shelf. Prompt number six. Stephen King is known for his long and gory novels. Which of his novels was tough for you to read? I've never read a Stephen King book and thought to myself, this could have been shorter. I love his writing style. I've always vibed with it. I love how he writes his characters. I love meeting every single character that lives in the town where wherever the story takes place. I just really get into that. It sets the scene. It really gets me invested in the people, even though I know I shouldn't, because most of the time it's a horror book. And I know the probability that the vast majority of people are not going to survive, and I'm getting attached to them and it's only going to hurt later. I do it anyway. I love it. So I never had a problem with the length of his novel. But as far as which of his books were tough for me to read, I would say It, but I can't tell you why because it's a spoiler, but those of you who have read it, ties back into that big fear of mine. You know exactly what I'm referencing. And then my other one was Pet Sematary, because that one just scared the absolute stuffing out of me when I read it. Prompt number 7. Have you ever DNF'd a Stephen King book? No, but I should have. I should have DNF'd Fairy Tale, and I should have DNF'd Holly. The reason why I should have DNF'd Fairy Tale, the first section of that book was classic King. Beautifully written characters, character interactions, slice of life, prime King writing. But once we got into the fantasy portion of that novel, he didn't carry that same energy forward with the other characters that we meet along the way. And these characters were based on fairy tale characters that we've grown up with. There was nothing new there, and I found them to be very flat on the page and boring, and I just kept thinking it was going to get better, and it didn't. Holly, I almost DNF'd because I didn't think I was going to be able to keep pushing through all of the political stuff, which was more prevalent than it has been in any of his previous books. If that wasn't bad enough to have to suffer through, then we get into the story takes place during COVID, and these characters were so obsessive about, just over the top. I mean, I did a lot of the stuff that these characters did, but I did not walk around every person I met, ask them, are you vaccinated? Are you double vaccinated? Who's your vaccination through? Nobody did that. I don't know a single person that everybody they came in contact with had that conversation. It just was every single character. It was awful. And as such, that is the end of Stephen King being an autobi author for me. From now on, I will be making sure to let plenty of other people read the book and update Goodreads, because if I had done that, if I had waited a week and saw the sheer number of people that were DNFing that book right and left because of those things, then I would have saved myself the trouble. I convinced myself he wouldn't do that to the character of Holly Gibney. He wouldn't take this beloved character and do her that way. And he did. And I also feel like he was not true to her character, but that's a whole nother story. All of the books that I'm talking about, I'll have my website linked below that have all of my written reviews. So if you're interested, you can check those out for more details. Prompt number 8. Have you read his books in publication order? Not yet. Prompt number 9. What Stephen King books would you like to read but haven't yet? First on the list is The Dead Zone, because my friend Jake over at the Bookish Drummer, that's his favorite Stephen King book, and he actually sent me a copy. So that one is top of my list. The other one that I really want to read is Insomnia, because I've heard that that one is directly related to a lot of Dark Tower things, which is my favorite series by Stephen King. It's also my favorite fantasy series. Prompt number 10. Name a book he has written that other people liked but you don't. Fairy Tale. That one ended up being one of my lowest ranked books of the year. I did pre-order it. I don't have it to show you because I promptly sold that copy on Pango Books, gave it another home to somebody else who might appreciate it more. Prompt number 11. Name a book of his you think is underrated. The Gunslinger. So many people read this book, and because they don't understand it, it doesn't make sense. A lot of people will actually DNF this book and DNF the Dark Tower series. I had a lot of questions, but I wanted the answers to those questions. And what you don't realize is this is a roadmap of the entire Dark Tower series. A lot of people of the series will tell you to read this one last. I say read it first, and then after you finish book 7, come back and reread it, because that is where the true magic and beauty of the Gunslinger comes to bear. Number 12. Creepy characters. Which Stephen King characters would you like to have dinner with? Oh my gosh, spoiler alert, I am filming this around Thanksgiving, so I immediately think Thanksgiving dinner. Who would I like to have Thanksgiving dinner with? Gosh, Jerome and Barbara Robinson, Bill Hodges, Holly Gibney. To be able to take part and the dynamic that is that little group of characters. Right alongside that, I would love to have dinner with the quartet, the 4 main characters of Stephen King's Dark Tower series. Oh my gosh. That would probably be a more appropriate character group to have Thanksgiving dinner with, because there would be a lot of awkwardness and probably at least one argument break out at that one. Prompt number 13 asks, has Stephen King inspired you to start reading and writing? No and no. I was already a huge reader, an avid reader by the time I started reading Stephen King. My mom got me started with the Babysitter's Club, Sweet Valley High, graduated me to Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys. I already had hundreds of books, if not thousands, under my belt by the time I started reading King. You know, and as far as writing, I don't want to be an author. I would much prefer to consume other stories than to tell them, because I know myself, I would only focus on one or the other, and I would much rather visit other worlds than create them. Prompt number 14. If you were able to meet Stephen King, what would you say? I would start by thanking him. He wrote my favorite fantasy series. Some of my favorite books have been written by Stephen King. He is the author I own the most books of, probably my most read author. I have reread a lot of his books as well, and I plan to reread more, and I plan to read more of his works that I haven't. Older stuff, you know, and I know myself, I would not be able to not have a discussion about why he is putting so much political junk in his books. And so I would love to hear his reasoning behind why he's doing that. He has to know that we're not enjoying it. He has to be getting that feedback, but he's continuing to do it. So I feel that until we start talking with our wallets, which I do think that's going to happen, he's going to keep doing it for however many more he can churn out before he leaves us. Prompt 15. Have you ever been to Bangor, Maine? I have not. No intention of going, no reason to go. I can't think of anything over there I've ever thought, oh, I want to go to Maine and see this. So nope. Prompt number 16 asks, which do you prefer more, his books or movies? Y'all already know I'm gonna say books. I am a huge book snob. I am not the person you want to watch a TV show or a movie that's based on a book that I've read, because I'm gonna get on your nerves, because I will make constant remarks, noises, you're gonna hear me huffing. It is a very rare occurrence I enjoy a film adaptation off of a book. That's just me. And then the final prompt, number 17, asks to name my favorite Stephen King movies. The very first one that I remember seeing as a child was Firestarter with Drew Barrymore. Oh my gosh, I just absolutely loved that movie as a little girl. I wanted to be her so bad. It's a good thing I wasn't. And maybe that's where my love for fire came from, because anytime I've ever played a video game where there was a caster, like a mage class, that I could throw fireballs, that is always what I did. It didn't matter if anything else was better, I always chose fire. Another movie that I loved was Misery. I thought they did a great job actually adapting that one. And then of course there's The Green Mile. I love that movie. I have watched that movie so many times. I cry. Oh my goodness, I cry so hard every time. Even though I know what's gonna happen, I still cry. I can't make myself not cry, even though I'm like, don't cry, don't cry. You know what's gonna happen, don't cry, don't cry. I still ugly cry every single time. So that is the end of this tag. That is all of the questions, all of my answers. Again, if you're a creator and you wanna do this tag, I've got the prompts in the description box down below. And if not, and you wanna answer any or all of these down in the comments below, please feel free to do so. I can't wait to see what your answers are. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next one.